joining us today at Take 5. In this series of teachings, which has been just fantastic, and it takes so long to teach important truths, and we're just hitting it in little 5-minute segments. But we've been talking about this incredible provision of strengthening grace that is available for us as New Testament believers, but which we often don't access or make use of or don't have flow to us because we just don't know. I often say, if you don't know, you don't go, you don't go, you don't get, you don't get, you don't have, you can't do. We need to go to the throne of grace and find grace to help in our time of need. You know, it's so interesting, that word help in Hebrews chapter 4:16 in the Greek language. It's only used one other place in the New Testament. I believe it's Acts 27, and there it's in the plurals, helps. And it is used in that situation where Paul was on that journey on the ship, and they hit that very bad storm. And I mean, their ship is about to come apart, and they're throwing things overboard, and they think they're going to lose their life. And I mean, they're in dire circumstances. But the Bible said they used helps. Well, what are the helps? Helps were these thick ropes that were stored in a certain compartment on the ship that could be taken out and could be used to literally wrap the ship. Now we call it frapping. It's a nautical term, a modern term called frapping. And that's when you take a cable, or in Paul's case, you take those ropes and you wrap them around the ship and bind them to hold the ship together, because you know, even though the ship is built well, there are storms that will take it apart. And so they used helps to secure the ship so they didn't lose their life. Well, you know what Hebrews says? Let's come boldly to the throne of grace. Why? So that we can find grace to help, to frap us, to secure us, to strengthen us, to aid us, to fortify us, so in the times of testing, we don't lose it. That's very important to know. In Ephesians chapter 3, Paul was praying. He said, I pray that God would grant you, that you would receive a divine grant according to the riches of His glory, that God would give you something that's equal to the riches of His glory, and that He would strengthen you with might by His Spirit in the inner man. Man, that is a fantastic prayer of Paul for believers. And you know why he prayed that prayer for believers? 2 reasons. Number 1, they need it. Number 2, it's available. Well, we could say number 3, it's not automatic. If it was automatic, Paul would have written and said, I don't need to pray for you guys, because if you need something, God will just give it to you. No, he said, I am praying for you that God would administer His strength, His divine might to your inner man. Why did they need that? Because they were going to face tests, face trials, face the devil, deal with their body, deal with people, deal with difficult circumstances, deal with all the things we have to deal with in life. And to deal with all these things, you have to be powerful on the inside. But what do I do when I run to the end of my strength and I say, Lord, I'm just so weak? That's a time to rejoice and say, hey, when I'm weak in my own strength, I can tap in to His strength. I can be secured with that divine help called grace. I can be fortified by His Spirit in my inner man, by the Spirit of grace, by His strengthening grace, and by that enabling grace, I will be capable of doing all the things that I need to do. So that's a beautiful prayer. In the Amplified Bible, he said, I'm praying that God will strengthen you and reinforce you. Sometimes we need to be reinforced. You know, even when they pour concrete. Concrete's pretty strong, but you know what? They will put those rods inside it. Those are reinforcement rods because it adds a lot of strength to the concrete. God will reinforce you with His divine grace so that you never crumble and you never fall. Thanks for joining us today on Take 5.